Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at the current edition of the North Coast Journal. We're joined today by news editor Thad Greenson and prodigal arts and features editor Jennifer Famiko Cahill. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is.
Jennifer is back with us after, what is it, three weeks?
Was it 3 weeks?
Too long.
It felt shorter.
I bet it did.
But always good to be back.
It is good to have you back. So let's crack on and find out what's on the cover of the North Coast Journal this week.
It is a big week. It is the best of issue. And when I say a big week, I mean it is a big paper. What are we at, 76 pages this week?
76 pages.
And we have approximately 2 billion categories to sort out. Everything from, best appetizer to best tire shop, pretty much everything. And people vote on their favorite categories, and they are contentious. And I know this because after the nomination phase, because we do 2 phases, we do the phase where you nominate, and then the top 3 nominees go on to voting. And once it goes to the voting phase, people send us emails about like, what about this? How come you didn't include this? Or like people who missed that initial phase, and they are freaking out that they're favorites. And sometimes I think, well, is it the business owner that's calling? But sometimes there'll be multiple things. And nobody is that hopped up about sandwiches. That's not true. I am that hopped up about sandwiches. But
you snooze, you lose.
Yeah, exactly. And, some of our most hotly contested categories have new winners, old winners. And every year what we do is once we get the list, the secret list that we can't tell anyone about, which is hard for people who just blab literally for a living. But we have the secret list, and everybody in the newsroom goes through and picks what categories they want to write about. And is there a little fighting? Sometimes. But we mostly peacefully determine what categories we want to write a blurb about. And some of us choose like businesses and services that we've used, and we're like, yes, they are in fact a good auto body shop, and I will write about it. Some of us write about things that are surprising or shocking or where there's drama. One category that I was very intrigued by, Yuridiana Casares wrote about Cocina Mariposa, which is the Mexican place over by the golf course, hit 3 categories: best hidden gem, best Mexican restaurant, and best tacos.
Wow. Well,
strong showing for a tiny little shop that you would
Congrats.
Yeah. I mean, you could miss it really easy because it's tucked into the golf course, but it's very good.
Well, I've got to say I've driven by there a number of times, and I've always wondered, is that place good? So I guess I know now.
Yes. And they make their own horchata. So they're super nice. Go in, get some food. It's takeout only, but there's like a little patio where you can sit and eat at picnic benches. So enjoy. Some of the other things that were winners: Ferndale, not a big surprise for best holiday lights display. It is basically a giant Christmas card for all of December. I got to interview Kate B., who is great. She won our best craft artist. And one of the great things that I didn't mention in my write-up of her is that for the photo shoot, because we have sort of a circus carnival theme for the best of issue, she was like, oh, is this a circus theme? And, Holly from production, who's our production manager who is running the photo shoot, was like, yeah, it is. She was like, oh, hold on a second. I have a top hat and a ringmaster's jacket.
Yes.
She is living the life I've always dreamed of. That's all I can say. Nice. And then we also, we talked about certain things like Pearson's Garden Shop. Iridian was very excited about because she has become a plant hoarder over the pandemic. And I won't spoil the surprise about Humboldt County's favorite place to meet singles and to break up. Small hint, last year the breakup spot was Hatchet House. And we have, as a county, upped the ante this year.
Goodness gracious. Okay.
Be
All
afraid.
Right. Who got best community radio station?
Is that a category, Thad?
I am afraid that's not a category, but maybe we can add it for next year.
I'll have to fix that.
I think KZZH by default then.
All right. Well, we'll take it. We'll take by default if that's all we can get. All right. Well, that sounds like something that everybody should check out. I am going to check it out, and I've already got some good information. So thank you for that. So, Thad, let's turn to you for your story about the Yurok tribe's blueprint for missing and murdered Indigenous people.
Yeah, I wrote a story this week about the Yurok tribe's unveilings. Its third and final report from the program or the project that's named "I Will See You Again in a Good Way" in Yurok, and I think regular readers and listeners will be up to speed that we have an epidemic locally and statewide and really nationally of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is what it was initially called. Has since been changed to missing and murdered Indigenous people to be more all-inclusive. And the Yurok tribe has really been at the forefront of the effort to document this epidemic and really put some data behind it, because it was not something that was previously tracked by law enforcement agencies or the Justice Department as a unique epidemic affecting a specific demographic. And so in 2019, the Yurok tribe got a grant from the Department of Justice and paired with the Sovereign Bodies Institute, and really focused the first year of the report on just data mining and trying to put as many numbers to this issue as possible to kind of quantify how large a problem it is nationally, statewide, and then especially locally in Northern California. And what they found was that Indigenous people go missing and are murdered at a vastly disproportionate rate to their non-Indigenous counterparts in this country, and that this is especially acute in Humboldt County and Northern California in general, where I think we have about 2% of the state's native population in Humboldt County, and I think 36% of the missing and murdered people are from here, Indigenous people.
I was really struck by the statistic that Indigenous people crimes against them are 6 times less likely to be solved than against the European population.
Yes.
That's just like an amazing statistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually for homicide specifically, but yeah, I mean, It's a chilling statistic, and and I think year 2 of the report really kind of buckled down into both why there are some of those disproportionate outcomes as far as law enforcement responses, but then also why why this issue is so much more prevalent in Native communities, and really identified, kind of as one would imagine, a vast web of issues that all combine to contribute. So everything from, just the cycles of generational trauma, as Indigenous people were forced off their land, had their land stolen, were, murdered for bounty in California, were enslaved, and it was really an attempted genocide. And so that has reverberating traumas that will carry on from generation to generation, that make people both more vulnerable and less visible, which plays into kind of the law enforcement statistic or the case clearance statistic that you referenced. And then also there's kind of a jurisdictional morass in a lot of these cases, in that tribal police departments, police reservations, but they're not officially licensed to enforce state law on those reservations. And so when somebody goes missing, especially in Northern California, where there's a lot of remote regions, there can be a lot of confusion about who the lead agency should be, and even infighting between agencies over who is going to take on a missing persons or a homicide investigation. And so really all of these factors, contribute together to kind of fueling this epidemic. And so this third report that the Yurok tribe released is really designed to be a blueprint for communities and agencies and tribes to come up with really multifaceted plans for intervention, prevention, and just kind of a multifaceted response. And so what the tribe is trying to do really is both kind of come up with a framework for the Yurok tribe itself to institute programs to kind of, both mitigate the chances that somebody goes missing or is murdered from their tribal body, or but also, I guess, provide this to other communities throughout the state and the nation to say, look, these are the things that you should look at to kind of help address this issue. So it's a really comprehensive report, and I think really has the chance to do reverberating good throughout both Northern California, but then all over really.
Now, among the steps that I noticed in the report was one called the Feather Alert. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, included in the report, in this kind of blueprint, are a number of concrete state policy proposals that the tribe is pushing for, and this one is actually the closest, I believe, to coming to fruition. Assemblymember Ramos of Southern California, actually the only native member of the California legislature, has introduced a bill that would create a feather alert. So I think most people at this point are familiar with an amber alert for at-risk juveniles who have gone missing, or a silver alert for at-risk seniors who go missing. And this would do the same thing, but for at-risk native tribal members, and would issue, it'd be an alert that comes to all cell phones, landlines, kind of quickly dispersing this information and making people aware of it. And so that bill is working its way through the legislature now and seems to have pretty widespread support and seems very likely to pass this month.
The other thing I was struck by on the heels of this report, Blythe, Georgia, had a family member go missing right in the middle of all this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's actually Blythe's good friend, Dr. George's good friend, Emily Rissling, who we've written about a number of times in the journal. And she went missing, as they were working on this third report. And so in addition to being a close friend of Blythe George's, she's also the cousin of the project director for the Yurok tribe, and had babysat the Yurok Tribal Police Department's police chief's kids, and so it was just very, very well connected through the Yurok tribe and the Hoopa Valley tribe, and many of the people working on this project had really direct ties to her, and so as Blythe George talked about it. At once, it kind of made them feel like the work they were doing was too late, too little, too late, and hollow, because they had this case that hit them so directly and so personally. But they ended up deciding to kind of, for lack of a better term, embrace that, to acknowledge that, and really work it into the report, and found that amid this just really tragic story of Emily, a young woman with mother of two with kind of tremendous promise in the Native community, who had already done many impactful things as far as being a ceremonial dance and song leader and things like that. They decided to kind of incorporate that into the report and their firsthand experiences of dealing with her disappearance and navigating kind of like we were talking about before, the jurisdictional boundaries and some of the instances when, in Blythe's words, there were opportunities to make Emily safe and various institutions or people kind of failed to do that. And so the result is the report is really heart-wrenching in that they use Emily's case as a case study and really look closely at missteps in the handling of some of the interactions with her when she was having some mental health issues prior to her disappearance, to kind of the jurisdictional issues after she disappeared. And those, through the pain of those personal anecdotes, I think there's a lot of insight in this report that wouldn't have been there otherwise, as far as, I think Blythe determined it as that they were learning kind of where the pitfalls were in real time and dealing with a real case. And so it's both. I think there's a lot to be learned from the report, and then it's also just it's a very impactful example of the reverberating impacts that come when somebody goes missing in these kinds of circumstances.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be learned from this story as well. Before we move on, is there any closing thoughts about this that you want to add?
I think I would really encourage everyone to read the report, at least read the summaries in it, because I think that for us in Humboldt County, living in an area with so much Native history and such a rich Native population, I think this is an issue that really does affect everyone here. And the report, while it has a lot of technical stuff for governments and law enforcement agencies and things like that, also has a lot of things I think that community members can take away as far as just ways to look out for one another, ways to make sure that we are taking care of everyone in our collective community and looking out for them.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that story. And I suggest everybody read this story. Well, let's move on to pests in the garden. We got a story from a neighbor of mine, Julia Graham-Witt, and she's kvetching. Is that what she's doing, Jen?
Kvetching a little bit, but she's also kvelling about some really great ways to combat the pests. She sent me the most adorable picture of a little Bambi doe in her backyard. I guess it's not a Bambi doe, it's Bambi's mother. Anyway, this beautiful doe who's kind of like looking at the camera from the beautiful greenery and the wildflowers. And then she explains that she at home calls them cloven-hoofed devil spawn. Although they are also apparently sometimes called rats with antlers.
That's a little harsh. This is a little harsh.
It's a little harsh, but it ain't all pulling Santa's sled. Deer are out here eating roses, eating every vegetable you can throw them, except apparently they also, like my children, will not eat zucchini. And her one deterrent that she can get to is fencing. The long and short of it is fence. You can apparently get the stuff that smells bad, the repellent, but it smells like rotten eggs. And going outside and sniffing rotten eggs isn't probably why you started gardening. She also has some good recommendations about, there are a few things that they don't eat, like the zucchinis, dahlias they don't eat, which is nice. Most of what she's recommending for her garden nemesis, including the gopher, cue Caddyshack music. The gopher apparently is another one that you can have the proper fencing, not fencing exactly, hardware cloth is what she recommends instead of chicken wire. Basically, you can either fence them out or suffer, or go full on war and kill the little suckers. And not everybody is ready to, do murder for their tomatoes. I get it. But she also points out, though, if you've got a great blue heron, they eat gophers. So if you can get yourself a great blue heron, that's the way to go. But she's
I think that's an endangered species. I would not recommend people try and capture any great blue herons.
Yeah,
just a thought. Just a thought.
I'm waiting for the angry birders. Come at me, birders. But it is a happy circumstance if you happen to live near one of these rare creatures. But she does mostly recommend either fencing away things that eat your garden or bringing on board something that will deter it or eat it. The aphids apparently are a preferred snack of the adorable ladybug. So she recommends making your garden ladybug friendly, no herbicides, no pesticides, and plant things like dill, parsley, and fennel, which are lovely to have anyway. And you get the ladybugs in and they eat up all the aphids. Likewise, if you want to kill the mosquitoes, and my God, we all want to kill all the damn mosquitoes. This is an astounding statistic. I had to look it up because I was like, can she be right about this? In fact, bats may be the answer to your question. Make yourself a bat house and have a bat house that will eat all the mosquitoes. How many mosquitoes, you ask? This is what I had to look up. 6,000 to 8,000 bugs per night. They
wow.
they eat mosquitoes the way that I go at potato chips. And then they do it again the next night, but without the same level of regret. And you get enough of these bats and you will be eaten less. And they don't all suck blood, right?
I'm not going to opine on that.
You just get yourself some bug-eating bats. And just, if you have squicky feelings about bats, just get over it and start encouraging them, because they're just little flying rats. You've already got rats with antlers. Why not have some flying rats that will eat bugs in your yard?
So the takeaway is get yourself a fence. Do not capture any great herons. Yes. And then attract bats.
Yes.
And you'll
attract bats, attract ladybugs. This is all good advice.
I like it. It is good advice.
It's pretty easy. And, I'm actually thinking about getting a bat house now. I don't actually garden, but my God, I hate mosquitoes. And my daughter is one of those people who is has delicious, maple syrup blood or whatever that just attracts mosquitoes. And we're all fine.
Me too.
Really, you?
Yes. They love the redheaded Irish types.
Is that what it is?
I'm guessing. That's just my empirical thought.
It's your diet of bangers and mash that makes you particularly tasty.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. The only thing I don't like about bats is when they come out and say, "I'm the Batman."
Plus, then you have an army of bats.
Other than that, they're great.
You can basically say you command an army of bats, and that's what I'm looking for. Those are the goals I'm looking to achieve in this life.
Nice. All right. Well, we've got about 2 minutes left, and you were on the movie beat this week. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the movie you reviewed?
Yeah, this week I dove into a movie that I was really, it's one of those movies where you see the preview and you're waiting for it to come and you're waiting for it to come, and it is not coming to Humboldt. So we get every big tentpole movie and occasionally a weird political propaganda or, right-wing religious movie, but we don't get Asian American horror. So the movie which is directed by Iris K. Shim and stars Sandra Oh, fantastic, wonderful Sandra Oh, is the name is the Korean word for mother. So it is one of those hardcore, scary mommy movies, but it is from a particular Korean American lens. And I know I talked about in the review about how Korean horror is really the thing and has been the thing for a while. But Korean American horror is different because we are looking at the diaspora, right? We're looking at how people live in different countries and abroad, away from Korea. But in particular, Korean American life and experience is different. And this film, while it's not so different, right? It's not a Jordan Peele movie that's going to blow your mind and disturb you for many weeks. And it's not a revolutionary kind of special effects movie. And it's not, it's not wild and crazy. And some of the themes are kind of old themes, like when is a mother mothering too much? Letting go. It has themes of, past trauma haunting your life and things like that. But it takes it from a Korean American perspective, including things like, immigrants living in a country where they might not thrive, but their children will. And, all the devotion and the cultural habits, cultural practice around death and grieving and ancestors and things like that. And also, I found it wicked scary.
Well, that sounds like a great recommendation. A movie that Joan Crawford could have starred in a different place.
Yeah. Call your mom over, sit down, watch this terrifying movie, and and bond.
Go. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. That's about all the time we have for this week. Thanks for joining us today, Thad and Jennifer. North Coast Journal is on newsstands now, also online 24 hours a day. Get out, get a copy, and be informed, be entertained, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
See you next week.